Welcome back to America Decides. In his final speech to the United Nations General Assembly, President Biden said he sees the world's challenges, but has hope there's a way forward. He also emphasized his support for Ukraine in its war against Russia.
The good news is Putin's war has failed, and at his core aim. He set out to destroy Ukraine, but Ukraine is still free. He set out to weaken NATO, but NATO is bigger, stronger, and more united than ever before.
Weijia Jiang joins us now from the United Nations in New York. And Weijia, we know you spoke with the NATO Secretary General about a range of issues today, including the war in Ukraine. What did he have to tell you?
Yes, we did, Scott, and we spoke to him shortly after President Biden delivered his remarks, which really was an effort for the president to cement his legacy on foreign policy. And not only did Biden speak about Ukraine, but he also touched on all the things that the administration has done under his leadership, investing in climate change and trying to broker a ceasefire in Gaza. But with regard to Ukraine, which of course is the Secretary General's main concern here, he did talk about Biden's leadership in this effort and what he's looking for in the next few days, especially as President Zelensky makes a speech before this group.
President Zelensky has been very clear about what he believes could help him win, and that is the use of long-range missiles into Russia. Of course, you know what Putin has said about that. He said if the West allows that to happen, then that would mean the West is now in the war with Russia. But you recently called his bluff on this because you said we've heard these sorts of things from Putin before. So do you not take his words at face value here?
He has threatened us again and again since the start of this war, when we delivered advanced artillery, advanced battle tanks, fighter jets, and now he threatens us again. He tries to coerce us from supporting Ukraine. We need to remember what this is. This is a war of aggression. Russia attacked another country. That's a blatant violation of international law. According to international law, Ukraine has the right to self-defense, and that includes also the right to strike legitimate military targets on the territory of the aggressor, Russia. Some allies have no restrictions on the use of their weapons. Others have imposed some kind of restrictions, but also those allies have actually loosened the restrictions over the last months. I welcome that, and also welcome that we have an ongoing consultations on this issue in NATO.
But from your view, do you believe that Ukraine should be able to use these long-range missiles?
I believe that what you have seen so far, that some allies have loosened the restrictions, is the right way to go, and I welcome that we continue to work on these issues. The challenge is that in a war there are no risk-free options. But I strongly believe that the biggest risk will be if President Putin wins, because that will send a message to him that when he uses military force, he gets what he wants. And that's also not only a challenge for Europe, but also something we will see in Asia, because the war in Ukraine is followed closely in Beijing. So as the Japanese Prime Minister actually told me yesterday in a meeting, what happens in Ukraine today can happen in Asia tomorrow. So this is about standing up for international law and prevent authoritarian regimes from believing that they can get what they want by using military force.
We have seen President Biden be convinced on the Abrams tanks, on the fighter jets, and change his position. Will you try to convince President Biden to change his stance on these long-range missiles?
Well, as I said, this is part of an ongoing conversation among NATO allies, and also the United States has loosened its restrictions because not so many months ago, Russia opened a total new front. And until then, most of the fighting in Ukraine had taken place deep inside Ukrainian territory. But when the Russians opened the front in the Kharkiv region, the front line and the borderline was more or less the same. And of course, then it doesn't give any meaning to say that you cannot fire behind the front lines. And then the United States loosened up the restrictions on the use of their weapons. And I think it's absolute value in now seeing if there are so the potential of loosening up even more. But again, I think these conversations should take place among allies. That's the best way of addressing these issues.
Of course, a parallel conversation is whether Ukraine will ever be able to join NATO. What do you say to that?
Well, Ukraine should and must join NATO. They have made it clear they would like to join NATO. NATO also made it clear that they should become a member. So what we are discussing is not if, but when. And I think we need to understand that at some stage this war has to end. And when the war ends, we need to be sure that this is really the end.
Of course, there is another conflict going on in Gaza, and NATO does not have a unanimous agreement, the countries, about the approach. So how would you describe NATO's view on how to end that war and whether a united front is necessary first?
So we are deeply concerned about the escalation, the suffering, and of course that's also the reason why I welcome that the United States and other allies, the United States, Qatar, and Egypt, have now taken initiatives or are working hard to try to find a peaceful way forward to de-escalate, to have the release of the hostages, but also, of course, a ceasefire. NATO is the answer to many problems in the world, but NATO is not the answer to every problem.
And that is the message that President Biden sent as well, Scott, that now is the time to finalize that ceasefire agreement. And one other note, President Biden, even though this is not a political speech, did get a bit nostalgic, and he had a message to foreign leaders. He said that some things are more important than staying in power, and it's the people who matter the most. That, of course, is significant given the fact that he stepped down from the top of the Democratic presidential ticket, paving the way for Vice President Harris. Scott.
Busy day at the UN in New York. Weijia Jiang, thank you very much.